Hello and welcome to Making Through the Seasons. In this video, I'm going to share with you all the things that I got up to in the month of May. I'm going to start out with what I finished this month, which includes some knitting, crochet, and a little bit of cross stitch. And then I'm going to move on to what I've been working on this month, which is mostly knitting and crochet. And then I'm going to share with you some information about a virtual knitting conference that I attended with the Knitting Guild Association. And that is the Next Level Knitting Conference, and I'll share with you some of the classes that I've been taking and some of the work that I've done in those classes. And then I'll share some of the spinning that I've gotten up to this month, and I'll end the video with a little bit about me making some felt flower brooches that I made for my children's teachers during the Teacher Appreciation Week. And so I'll include that at the end, and you can see sort of start to finish the whole process of making these little flower brooches. Hello and welcome to Making Through the Seasons. I thought I would approach this video a little bit differently than I have in the past, and I would sit down and have a little armchair chat about all the things that I've been working on this month. And so I'm going to start with some of the things that I have finished this month. So this month I finished a pair of socks that I've been working on for a few months now, and these are going to be a present. I have still have some ends to weave in, and they have not been washed yet, but I'll do that prior to gifting. And these are men's socks that I knit, and I did a basic pattern. This is my basic sock go-to pattern. And I added to that a little bit of texturing, and you can see there, it's just a really simple knit 2, purl 2 mixed with stockinette. So it's 2 rows of knit 2, purl 2, 2 rows of stockinette, and it gives this really nice sort of waffly textured appearance. The yarn that I used to make the sock in itself is a hand-dyed yarn that I dyed myself. I naturally dyed that, and then I used little scraps of other yarns for the heels and the stripes at the top. This is a Cascade Heritage leftover, and I think this is West Yorkshire Spinners. I forget what the color is. It's something like pumpkin or cinnamon, nutmeg, some sort of fall seasonal sounding yarn, if I remember correctly. And so I finished these. There's 2 of them. I've got the whole set now, and they're ready to be finished up and gifted away. Then this month, May, is my daughter's birthday. She turned 9, and I made her several things for her birthday, and they've already been gifted, so I've taken them back just to show here. The first thing that I made her is a pair of socks, and these are out of King Cole's Footsie yarn, and the Footsie yarn is, this brand of yarn is all about fruit flavors. So this is the passion fruit. I've made her either strawberry or watermelon. They kind of look like one of those two in the past, and then I made her these. She has a wool sensitivity, especially on her feet, and so these are a non-wool sock yarn, and so they don't bother her at all. I made them a little roomy. Oh, the cat is playing with a toy. Let me just take that away from her. Okay, so yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about these ones. They were super easy to knit. I knit them my basic top-down sock pattern, so that's my go-to with a Eye of Partridge heel. These were 56 stitches that I used 2.25 millimeter needles for. I did a basic 2x2 rib at the top, and there you go. Then the next thing that I made for her is a little stuffed chicken. I had seen Allie at Little Drops of Wonderful, or This Wonderful Life, and she had made these crocheted amigurumi chickens. This is Mabel, and it's by Oak and Marlow. And the funny thing is, my daughter keeps calling it maple instead of Mabel, and so I think maple and oak kind of go together. But I crocheted this out of Burnett Blanket, which is, I believe, what the pattern calls for, and then just some little scraps. I think this is actually what I did is I took a DK weight yarn and I held it 4 strands together, and then I actually ran it through my spinning wheel to sort of somewhat ply them together to get a comparable weight of yarn to go with the burnette blanket for the crop. Is that the crop? I think it's the crop of the chicken. And then just a little extra yarn for the beak, and I chose the safety eyes just because I thought that they would look the cutest on it. She absolutely loves this. She took it to school with her on her birthday, and they played all sorts of farm games, and it came home with a little leash on it. She just loves it. So this is such a cute pattern. And again, you can get that on Etsy and on Ravelry, and that's Mabel. And then the next thing that I made for her birthday is I cross-stitched her a little llama. She's really into llamas. And so I bought this pattern off of Etsy. I just looked at cross-stitch patterns, and I'm fairly new to cross-stitch, and I don't necessarily have all of the time and patience for one of those bigger cross-stitch, and so this sort of fit the bill right here. It's the Selva Designs llama, and you get 2 patterns. You can make the llama with like the little decorations on its ears and around its neck, or you can have a plain llama, but I chose the decorated llama. And I'm not sure if it'll show up, but this is, the Aida cloth has sparkles in it. I chose this light pink, yeah, it kind of picks it up, light pink sparkly Aida cloth to make it on, and she, when she realized that it sparkled, was like over the moon. She was like, oh my gosh, it's sparkling. So it was really sweet. And then that's all the things that I made for her birthday, which I think is enough. And let's see, so I have also, that's all of the finished objects that I have, and the rest is mostly works in progress. So the first thing I'll show is I decided to join along in the Bakery Bears podcast, knit along of the the Scrappy quilt socks. Kay Jones of the Bakery Bears released this pattern in May, and at first I wasn't gonna knit along to it because I had like, you know, a lot of other things I was thinking about making or that I was in the process, but in the end I really just couldn't resist it any longer and I had to cast it on. So these are the 64 stitch, that's what I used, and 2.25 millimeter needles, which is what I use for all of my socks. I like a rather long cuff, rather not cuff, but the leg I like to be a little bit long so that in the winter I can wear them with like ankle boots and have them come up over the top of the ankle boots so it doesn't, the boot top doesn't rub against my legs. And these are 3 different yarns. The purple is a Cascade Heritage yarn that I had in a solid color. That was a scrap from a previous project. And then this gray sparkle, it's like tweedy, it's gray tweedy yarn here is actually called Cloudborne Fibers, and I think that's called Superwash Merino Sock Splash. And then the white yarn, no, I'm going to take that back. The white yarn is the Superwash Merino Splash by Cloudborne Fibers, and then the gray yarn is called Sherba Tweed. And I love the gray yarn. It's got these tiny, it's like a little confetti or funfetti cake with all the little bits of color in there. And so instead of making these truly scrappy, I decided to use 3 different yarns and to do like a striping pattern where the gray is carried primarily throughout to give it a little more continuity to it. I followed the stitch pattern and the stitch count. I added my own heel because I love the Eye of Partridge heel. I'm not sure what heel is in the pattern, but I can autopilot the heel when it's the Eye of Partridge and I don't have to think about or pay attention at all. And the same thing with the toe. I know exactly how long to knit my socks for in order to make the toe and how to make the toe. So I went with my own heels and toes on these. So I'm not sure exactly what the pattern ones look like. I think they're pretty close, but not entirely sure. And then I've started the second one of these and I'm making some progress on there. And then the next thing that I've been working on is I've been continuing to work on my granny wrap. let's see, I think it's called a granny wrap. And I've seen this knitted on, rather crocheted on several other podcasts. Several other podcasters have been making this, and I loved the idea of a big, cozy crocheted shawl. And so I'm gonna try not to lose any. So it's gotten quite large, although I am concerned that it's not going to be quite as oversized as I was hoping for, but I might be wrong about that. It's clearly larger than my wingspan at this point in time. And I used a natural yarn at the top, and then the 3 colors after it, I used the same base, and I naturally dyed using different levels of madder to get the different levels of color that you see here. And I have another skein that is on a different base that is the next sort of step up from this madder, but because they're different bases, I wasn't sure I really wanted to include it from a continuity perspective, but I'll see how big this gets, and if it is sufficiently large, then I don't think I'll use the extra skein. I'll save that for another project. I was really enjoying this in the beginning, and now the rows are so extremely long that it takes me like an hour or more to get from one side to the other, and I'm loving it a little bit less. It's just so long, and that feeling of like accomplishment that you get when you quickly zoom across is not there anymore. So I'm sort of taking this as like making myself, sit down and focus on one row at a time, trying to plow through the last little bit, because I've made it so far to like lose interest at the end would just be so sad. So I'll continue this one, hopefully have a finished object in the near future. And then let's see, the next thing I have on the needles is, I'm still working on my Woodhaven pullover. I'm not going to show that today. The only thing I'm working on now is the body, and it's not that far along from the last time I gave it an update. It's coming along, but it's just white stockinette body in the round, so it's not really that much to see at this point. Hopefully next time I'll have a little more progress. I'll be able to get to the cuff of it and be able to show a little bit more. And then the next thing I thought I would just talk about a little bit is that the Knitting Guild Association hosted a virtual knitting conference at the end of April, and I wasn't able to attend it. It was during my children's spring vacation, and so I wasn't able to attend it live, but all the classes are available for 6 months following the conference. And so I went in and I chose the 10 classes. 10 was my number, 10 classes that I thought would help me in my knitting and also help me in level 2 of the hand knitting, level 2 master hand knitting. And so I've taken a few of those classes, and I thought I'd share just a little bit about some of the classes that I've taken and some of the things that we've done in them, maybe just a little bit of what I've been picking up and learning so far. So the first class that I took was about taming tension, and that was Binka Swan, and that was a great class. It was a really good sort of refresher, bringing back some of the level 1 things that you focus on in level 1, really about tension, but in level 2, there's a lot of seaming, and your tension at the sides of the knitting is so important. It was really good to hear a few different thoughts on how you can fix your tensioning and identifying where your tension might be off, particularly at those edge stitches. And then I also did a measuring gauge with Arenda Holiday, and that one was a great class just to listen to and to watch. It was really a lot of refresher if you've done level 1. If you haven't done level 1, it would be a great class to attend. And then I took a class called Upper Body Posture and Hand Ergonomics, and this was with Andrea Loud. And this was a fantastic class. I'm gonna link her information below, and she's a physical therapist, and she talked all about your body positioning when knitting and how you can assist your body positioning. And I honestly, it's one of those classes that sticks with you, and I find myself like thinking about my posture and how I'm holding myself when I'm not just knitting and crafting, but I'll find myself like putting laundry on the line and thinking about like how my head is positioned to my body to make it supported by my skeletal structure rather than my muscular structure. It was just a really interesting class, and I believe she does YouTube videos, and she has an online presence as well where you can learn more about this as well. So I would highly recommend looking into her. It was a great class. And then after I took that class, I did a class on short row shaping, and I'm gonna get the swatch for this. During the class, where is it? Nope, those aren't them. I appear to have lost it. Hold on. Watch out, bud. There we go, I found it. Okay. So during that class, I'm gonna go back to the start. So this was called Introduction to Short Rows, and this was by Dawn, the stitching coach, and it was a really great class. So we made these this is half of a scrubby pattern that is available on Ravelry, and in each one of these little triangles we did a different type of short row shaping, and some of these short row shapings I had heard of before and done, so the German short row, as well as the your traditional wrap and turn short row. But the other three ones were like the twin stitch, I think there was the Japanese, and then I can't remember what that last one was. But it was so good to learn the different ones and to see which ones were sort of easier to understand, which ones look better in the garter stitch. And so it was really great. I thought that was a great class. And so that is the short row shaping. And then after I took the short row shaping, I did a class on joining, 3 methods of joining, and this was around a holiday again. And this was really cool. I did, there's actually 4 different methods in here. And a lot of times, I know I'm guilty of this too, when it comes to the shoulders, the seaming at the shoulders, I'll do the 3 needle bind off because it saves you from having to go and find a tapestry needle or a darning needle and sew them together. It prevents you from having to do any sort of seaming. But when I took this class, it really shows you how different seams look, and it actually kind of highlights, how much nicer, let's say, the seaming is when you do it with the needle versus the 3 needle bind off. On the 3 needle bind off, you can see the stitches don't line up perfectly because of the way that you are binding off. It's a half a stitch off from one another. Whereas when you do the bind off and then follow it off with seaming it together, you get that perfect transition from one side of the knitting to the other side without that jog or that difference there. And so this is with the horizontal seam with the straight edge. And then we also did it, it's quite common to have that stair step to get that right slope and shape of the shoulder. And so we also did it with that stair step. And I thought that was just, whenever I've done this in the past, it's so tough when you get those big sort of stair steps to figure out how to seam it properly. But when I followed the class and did it along with the instructions, you get such a beautiful seam, and it really lines up just so perfectly. I could see how that would look just right sitting on the shoulder. And then we also did the Kitchener stitch. Now I normally do Kitchener stitches for socks. I do this quite often, but it was good to see it in a flat piece of knitting, because quite often when you do it, the cat is going absolutely nuts underneath me. I don't know if I can get him to lift up a little bit for those strings, but anyway, the Kitchener stitch, I usually see it on socks where it's folded like this, and so you don't really get to see it in that same flat perspective, but it really sort of drove home for me about making the consistency of the stitch sizes to get that perfect appearance of it. And I know most of the time when you graft something together, and I also learned a little bit about the words, using the correct words, and how it truly is a grafting, and that ideally that should be the word that you use to describe it rather than the Kitchener stitch. But that's sort of a conversation for another time. So I learned some really valuable lessons there, and something that I do all the time. And then the last class that I've taken so far, I intend to take more of these classes, but I haven't been able to get enough time in the day to take too many more. So in level 2 of the Master Hand Knitting, there is the requirement to knit an Argyle sock. And so I took an introduction to Argyle with Harry Wells, and I thought that this class was just amazing. So this is the swatch that you knit during the class and after the class. You couldn't quite finish this whole thing, and I learned some really valuable lessons. Let me see if I'm holding this up correctly. Yep, it's like this. This is my very first time trying anything Argyle, and it was a real eye-opener in terms of how to do Argyle and how to make the color transitions without getting the holes in them, the tensioning and how to tension your yarns as you go up it. And it was really eye-opening how difficult this is. I had used traditional knitting bobbins to knit this swatch here, and I'll show you a traditional knitting bobbin that you can buy, like the Clover brand. You can get this at any sort of knitting or craft store. And Harry Wells in the class showed a different type of bobbin that you can use, and I've purchased these as I continue to try Argyle. I'm going to try this, and this is a different type of bobbin that's made of like a silicone material. And you pop it open and you can wind the yarn on, and then you close it up and it holds the yarn so that it doesn't unravel. It holds it in the seam, but it also allows you to sort of pull it and feed it as you go, which it'll hold it. Isn't that so cool? It holds it as you go, and it doesn't have what I'm hoping is that it doesn't have the same tendency. These notches here were constantly tangling in all of the yarn that's hanging off the back of the Argyle. And so I would knit a row, and by the end of the row, all of these would be tangled in each other. Even if I kept them pretty short, they were still getting caught up in each other. And so hopefully this will help me as I move forward. I purchased the instructor, Harry Wells, has a hat pattern for an Argyle hat. And so I went ahead and purchased that and purchased the yarn to make the hat to try another test of Argyle before I move into even attempting any sort of sock for the program. This was a real eye-opener in terms of, I'm sure I've said that so many times about this, the Next Level Knitting Conference, because it really has been a great experience in terms of teaching you. So I think that a lot more practice is necessary to really feel like I have this under control for it. So the next thing, I thought I would just share a little bit about spinning. During my update last month, I had shown some fiber that I had purchased at a auction that my Knitters Guild had. And so I finished spinning that up, and that's what you see here. And as I was spinning this, I was trying to think of what I could use this for. And it's a little bit bright and maybe a little garish, just a little bit. And so I decided that the best thing I could do is to try to match this with a more neutral yarn to see if I could tone it down a little bit. I love the pops of color, but I don't know that I want only the pops of color. So what I did is I spun this up, and I think it's probably about a fingering weight yarn. You can kind of see there. I chain plied this, so I used the one strand, and then using your hand you get 3 strands from it, so it gets that more continuous color. And I'm going to match this with some, this is just some Romney that I purchased at the Connecticut Sheep and Wool Festival. And I'm going to do some testing with this to see if I should do a 2-ply or a chain ply as well, to see if I can match the weight of yarn that I got on this. So I thought that I could do these two together and make a shawl that has stripes of the vivid color or even lacy sections. I'm not entirely sure at this point, but I thought I could match these two together and make a pretty interesting shawl. So I have 10 ounces of this, so I can use this to be the primary color of the shawl. And then I have about 4 ounces of this. So I'll mix this into this in a smaller ratio to sort of tone it down a little bit. And then I think that's pretty much all I have to talk about. I did one other craft this month, and I'll include that at the end, a little bit of footage from it and the final project, because we gave them away. So the beginning of May was Teacher Appreciation Week at my children's school, and on one of the days they asked that we bring in a flower for the teacher or the staff in the classroom. And it could be any sort of flower. You can buy flowers, you could pick flowers, you can make flowers. And so we decided that we would make little felt flower brooches. And so I made the 2 teachers in my son's kindergarten class and the teacher in my daughter's 3rd grade class, I made them little brooches of the felt, and then the kids helped me to hot glue on the back of them little buttons and safety pins so that they could wear them or put them on a bag or use them however they want. So I'll include a little bit of footage at the end of the making of that and of the kids making. They made cute little cards to thank their teachers and to attach the little brooches to. And additionally, my daughter, who can read very well, likes to call them brooches, which sort of makes sense because if you look at the word brooch, it looks like brooch. So she made her teacher a brooch. And that's about all I have today. So I'll include some of the other B-roll that I have of crafting through the month so you can see some of these projects go all the way through fruition. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next month. Here I thought I'd show just a little bit of footage of me blocking or getting ready to block the swatches that I made for the joining the shoulders, the 3 different methods for joining shoulder seams. What I did here is I was a little bit of a lazy knitter, and I knit the swatches and then did the joining method following the video. And then after I did it all, I wanted it to be blocked, and so I put it on the blocking mat and I pinned it out, and then I squirted it with a little bit of a spray bottle of water to get them to lay flat so that they're less curled and more professional looking. I really should have blocked them before I seamed them. However, I was knitting them as I was watching the class, and so I really didn't have a chance to get ahead of it that way. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, I am now going to show you how I made the flower brooches for my children's Teacher Appreciation Week. I started with felt circles, and then using the scissors at the outside of the circle, you cut in into the circle, making a spiral. And then once you have your spiral, you start at the beginning, at the middle of the spiral, and you roll it up on itself, like slowly adding to it all the way to till you complete it. And once you're done, you have sort of the premise of the flower. And then once you have that part, you go ahead and you take a needle and thread. On the back side, you sew it together. I used a doll making needle just because it was large and it would give me the capability to sort of go in and through larger bits of felt, larger quantities of the felt fabric. So it allowed me to really push through those larger layers, many different layers of it. And so I used some matching thread, and I just tried to go around it and catch all the different layers to really hold it together. And then once I finished that, I took a little pearl bead, I guess you would call it, and I put that at the very center of the flower. And I made 2 different styles of these. One is just a spiral, and the other one I started with a wavy shaped circle instead of a plain circle. And so that gives you a slightly different look to the flower. And so I made both those designs, and I made 3 of these. The wavy shaped is done in the exact same way. So you start at the outside and you cut a spiral into the felt, and then taking it at the very center, again, you take it from that center part and you slowly wrap it up upon itself, and then you turn it it over, and again, catching all the layers at the back side, you sew it together. And again, I used the pearl bead on this one as well, and I went and added that to the very center of it, sewing it in place. And then I repeated the process one more time to get the third and final flower. And then we move on to the last stage of it, which this is the part that the kids got to help me complete. So what I did is I took the 3 flowers here, and then I found a button for each one of them. And then the kids got to help put the hot glue on the button. We then attached the button. We attached the safety pin into the button, and then I covered the back part of the safety pin with a little bit of felt just to hold it down even more so in place against the button part of it. Once the safety pin was attached to the button, it allowed us to put some hot glue onto the button and attach it to the felt flower. We went ahead and repeated this so that all 3 flowers had the button and safety pin attached to it, and we had our finished brooches. And the final part of this project was just to attach these brooches to some cardstock. I punched some holes at the top of a piece of cardstock, and the kids wrote little thank you messages to their teachers on them. It was a very cute little gift to give them on the final day of their Teacher Appreciation Week. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I love to share what I get up to, and this month was a particularly fun month. The month of May is always a lot of fun in our house. It has lots of things to celebrate. We had Mother's Day at the beginning of the month, and then my anniversary, my husband and my anniversary, and my daughter's birthday fall towards the end of the month. So there is always good times to be had in the month of May, and always lots and lots of crafting. I will be speaking to you all again in June. Thank you, and happy crafting.